My name is Jane Mitchell. I'm 28 and 3 months ago I discovered my own family had been plotting to steal my inheritance for over 2 years. What started as a casual family dinner turned into the most devastating betrayal of my life when my mom casually handed me eviction papers with a smirk saying, "Pack your bags, sweetheart. This house belongs to us now." Little did she know I had been quietly building a legal fortress that would soon crush their elaborate scheme and leave them facing criminal charges they never saw coming. Hey everyone, before we dive into this wild family revenge story, I'm curious, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. If you're ready for a tale of ultimate family karma and sweet justice, smash that like button and hit subscribe because this story has more twists than a pretzel factory. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this epic family betrayal completely backfires. 2 years earlier, when my father passed away from cancer, I was drowning in grief. Dad had always been my anchor, the one person in our family who truly understood my dreams of becoming a pediatric nurse. He'd worked double shifts at the auto plant for years, saving every penny to buy our modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Cleveland. What I didn't know was that his death certificate had barely dried before my mother Linda and my older brother Marcus began hatching their plan. The house had been left to me in Dad's will, a decision that had apparently infuriated my family. I was the youngest, the irresponsible one, who'd spent years in nursing school instead of getting a real job like Marcus, who worked in construction. But Dad believed in me, believed in my dreams, and he wanted me to have stability while I built my career. For months after the funeral, Mom and Marcus seemed supportive. They helped me navigate the legal paperwork, assisted with property taxes, and even suggested I let them handle the boring financial stuff while I focused on my studies and grief recovery. I was so grateful for their help, so blinded by my need for family support, that I never questioned why they were suddenly so involved in my affairs. The first red flag should have been when Mom insisted I add her name to the utility accounts for emergencies. Then Marcus suggested he should have a key in case something happened. Slowly, methodically, they began inserting themselves into every aspect of the house's management. They convinced me to let them handle repairs, to let Mom stay over occasionally when she felt lonely, to let Marcus store his tools in the garage temporarily. What I thought was family support was actually an orchestrated campaign to establish residency and claim rights to my property. They documented every day they spent at the house, every dollar they contributed to utilities, every repair Marcus completed. They were building a case, gathering evidence for what they believed would be an easy legal victory over their grieving, distracted little sister. During this time, I was working night shifts at Cleveland General Hospital, completing my nursing program during the day, and trying to process the loss of the only parent who had ever truly supported me. I was exhausted, vulnerable, and completely unaware that my own family was preparing to destroy me financially and emotionally. The manipulation was subtle, but constant. Mom would make comments about how hard it must be for me to manage such a big responsibility alone. Marcus would joke about how I'd probably want to sell the house eventually anyway, since I never really seemed like the homeowner type. They planted seeds of doubt, made me question whether I was truly capable of maintaining the property, all while secretly consulting with lawyers about adverse possession claims and inheritance challenges. Their plan was brilliant in its simplicity: establish enough presence and financial contribution to challenge the will, claim the house had been intended for the whole family, and force me out through legal pressure I couldn't afford to fight. They assumed I was too young, too inexperienced, and too emotionally fragile to mount any real defense. They were counting on my love for them, my desperate need for family connection after losing Dad, to keep me compliant and unaware. But they made one crucial mistake. They underestimated how much Dad had taught me about protecting myself, and they had no idea that my grief counselor had recommended I document everything during this difficult period as part of my healing process. Every conversation, every financial transaction, every moment of their supposed help was carefully recorded in the journal Dad had given me for my 18th birthday. As months passed, their true attitudes began to slip through. Mom started making comments about how the house was too big for just me, how it was selfish to keep it all to myself. Marcus began treating the place like his own property, bringing friends over without asking, leaving his belongings everywhere, even changing the locks for better security, and giving me a copy like I was the guest. The psychological pressure was intense. They made me feel guilty for having something they believed should belong to all of us. They twisted my grief into a weapon, suggesting that Dad would have wanted us all to share the house, that keeping it for myself was somehow betraying his memory. The gaslighting was so effective that I began to doubt my own memories of Dad's explicit wishes. By the 18-month mark, my living situation had become increasingly uncomfortable, though I still didn't fully understand what was happening. Mom had essentially moved in, claiming her apartment lease had ended, and she needed a few weeks to find something new. Marcus was there almost daily, treating the basement like his personal workshop and storage unit. I felt like a stranger in my own home, but every time I tried to assert boundaries, they'd remind me how much they were helping with expenses and maintenance. The financial manipulation became more aggressive. Mom insisted we split all household costs 3 ways, even though I was the legal owner. She'd pay the bills directly, then present me with invoices for my share always, with a martyred expression about how much she was sacrificing for the family. Marcus charged me for every repair, every improvement, inflating costs and keeping detailed receipts that he said were for tax purposes. They began making decisions without consulting me. Mom redecorated the living room completely, claiming the old furniture was too depressing and that she was helping me move forward from my grief. Marcus installed a new security system and didn't give me the master code, saying he needed to protect his investment in the property improvements. When I protested, they accused me of being ungrateful and selfish. The psychological warfare intensified. They brought up every mistake I'd ever made, every time I'd struggled financially during nursing school, every moment of weakness during my grief period. They painted me as irresponsible, unstable, and undeserving of Dad's legacy. They suggested I should be grateful they were willing to help me with such a big responsibility, implying I was lucky they hadn't just let me fail on my own. Friends and extended family began treating me differently. I later learned that Mom and Marcus had been telling everyone I was struggling with mental health issues, that I couldn't handle the responsibility of homeownership, and that they were stepping in to prevent me from losing everything Dad had worked for. They positioned themselves as the responsible adults, saving the family home from my inevitable failure. The isolation was devastating. Every family gathering became an intervention about my problems. Cousins and aunts would corner me with concerned expressions, suggesting I should be more grateful for Mom and Marcus's help, hinting that maybe I should consider sharing the house officially since they were doing so much work. The narrative had been completely rewritten. I was no longer the daughter Dad had chosen to inherit his home, but the troubled child being rescued by her more capable family members. During this period, I began experiencing panic attacks. The stress of working full-time, finishing my nursing degree, and living in an increasingly hostile environment was crushing. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, who immediately recognized the signs of family manipulation and abuse. She helped me understand that what I was experiencing wasn't normal family dynamics, but a calculated campaign to destabilize my confidence and legal position. Dr. Chen encouraged me to start documenting everything more formally. I began secretly recording conversations, photographing changes made to the house without my consent, and keeping detailed financial records of all the money I was being forced to contribute beyond my legal obligations. I also started researching property law and inheritance rights, spending my few free hours in the law library downtown. The turning point came when Marcus brought contractors to the house without my permission, claiming he was adding value with a bathroom renovation. When I protested, he exploded with rage, screaming that I was an ungrateful brat who didn't deserve anything Dad had left me. Mom stood there nodding, adding that I was just like my father, too stubborn and proud for my own good. That comment hit differently because Dad had always been described as generous and wise. I realized they'd been rewriting history about him, too. That night, I called the one person I knew I could trust, Dad's old friend and lawyer, Robert Martinez. Mr. Martinez had handled Dad's will and had always treated me with respect and kindness. When I explained what had been happening, the long silence on the other end of the phone told me everything I needed to know. He asked me to come to his office the next day and to bring every piece of documentation I had. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones preparing to destroy you the deepest. If you've ever felt that sick feeling when family turns against you, hit that like button. You're not alone in this. And stick around, because the justice in this story is about to get absolutely delicious. Mr. Martinez's office felt like stepping into a sanctuary. Robert Martinez was in his 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen decades of family legal battles. He'd been Dad's friend since high school, and I remembered him coming to barbecues when I was little. As I sat across from his massive oak desk, surrounded by law books and family photos, I felt safe for the first time in months. "Jane, I need you to understand something," he said after reviewing my documentation. "What your family is attempting is called adverse possession fraud, combined with inheritance manipulation and elder abuse. Even though you're not elderly, the same legal principles apply when family members exploit grief and vulnerability." His voice was gentle but serious. "Your father specifically chose you as his heir because he knew this might happen. He came to me 6 months before he died, worried about exactly this scenario." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Dad had known. He'd seen the signs of his family's greed and had tried to protect me from beyond the grave. "Mr. Martinez pulled out a sealed envelope from his safe. A letter Dad had written to me to be opened only if there were challenges to his will or attempts to manipulate me out of my inheritance. In his familiar handwriting, Dad had written, "My dearest Jane, if you're reading this, it means they've shown their true colors. I'm sorry you have to face this, but I always knew you were stronger than they gave you credit for. The house is yours because you're the only one who understood that home isn't about money, it's about love, dreams, and building something meaningful. Don't let them steal your future. Fight for what's right. I believe in you more than you'll ever know." Through my tears, Mr. Martinez explained the legal strategy we would employ. First, we would file a formal cease and desist order against any further unauthorized changes to the property. Second, we would document every instance of their fraudulent claims and financial manipulation. Third, we would prepare a comprehensive case for harassment and fraud charges. But most importantly, we would wait for them to make their move, because Mr. Martinez was confident they were planning something big. "They've been building toward a legal challenge," he explained. "Everything they've done, establishing residency, documenting financial contributions, creating a narrative of your instability, it's all designed to support a court petition to overturn the will or force a sale of the property. But here's what they don't know. Your father and I anticipated this exact scenario. Dad had created multiple safeguards. He'd had the will reviewed by 3 different legal experts to ensure it was bulletproof. He'd established a trust fund that would cover my legal expenses if the inheritance was ever challenged. He'd even had the house appraised and documented extensively to prevent any fraudulent improvement claims. Most importantly, he'd included specific language in the will that would trigger severe penalties for family members who attempted to manipulate or defraud his chosen heir. Over the next several weeks, Mr. Martinez and I built our counteroffensive. We hired a private investigator to document Mom and Marcus's actual financial situations, discovering that Marcus was deeply in debt from gambling and construction equipment loans while Mom had been lying about her apartment lease. She'd been evicted for non-payment and had been planning to take over my house for months before Dad even died. We also uncovered their communications with a shady lawyer who specialized in will contests and property disputes. Through legal discovery processes, we obtained emails and text messages where they discussed their strategy to break that spoiled brat and force me to learn some respect for family. The messages revealed the depth of their animosity and the premeditated nature of their fraud. The private investigator also documented their lies to extended family and friends. We had recordings of Mom telling my aunt that I was mentally unstable and needed family intervention to prevent me from losing the house. We had photos of Marcus's unauthorized renovations and evidence that he'd been billing me triple the actual cost of materials while pocketing the difference. "Doctor, Chen provided professional documentation of the psychological abuse and manipulation tactics they'd employed. Her clinical assessment detailed how their behavior constituted a textbook case of financial abuse and emotional manipulation designed to undermine my mental health and decision-making capacity. But the most damning evidence came from their own words. The recordings I'd made captured them discussing their long-term plan to force me out their belief that I didn't deserve Dad's legacy, and their intention to sell the house and split the profits once they gained legal control. Mr. Martinez was particularly excited about one recording where Marcus explicitly stated that they'd been setting up their case since the day Dad died and that they'd done this perfectly so I would have no legal recourse. That single statement would prove premeditation and conspiracy, turning their civil fraud into potential criminal charges. Jane, Mr. Martinez said during one of our strategy sessions they've been playing chess while thinking you're playing checkers. But what they don't realize is that we've been playing three-dimensional chess from the beginning. Your father saw this coming, and we've been preparing for 2 years longer than they have. The final piece of our legal fortress was establishing what Mr. Martinez called the honey trap. We would let them proceed with their plan, documenting everything until they committed actions that would trigger criminal charges rather than just civil penalties. We needed them to actually attempt the fraud, not just prepare for it. They're going to evict you, he predicted. They're going to claim legal ownership and try to force you out physically. When they do, they'll be committing multiple felonies and we'll have them exactly where we want them. But Jane, this is going to be hard. You'll have to let them think they're winning right up until the moment we destroy them completely. The moment came on a crisp Tuesday morning in October. I was getting ready for my shift at the hospital when I heard multiple cars pulling into the driveway. Through my bedroom window, I watched Mom, Marcus, and 2 men I didn't recognize carrying boxes and a U-Haul rental truck. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to stay calm. Mr. Martinez had prepared me for this moment. I quickly activated the recording app on my phone and positioned myself where I could capture everything. When the front door burst open, they'd used Marcus's key without knocking. Mom strutted in, wearing her most triumphant smile. Behind her, Marcus carried a stack of official-looking papers, and the 2 strangers began photographing everything in the house. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mom said in a sickeningly sweet voice. "I hope you're packed because today's moving day." She gestured dramatically toward the men. "This is Dave and Rick from Evergreen Property Management. They're here to document the condition of our house before we begin renovations." Marcus stepped forward, his chest puffed out with authority. "Jane, we've been more than patient with you, but this charade ends today. We've filed a successful petition with the court to overturn Dad's will based on undue influence and your demonstrated inability to maintain the property responsibly." He handed me a folder, thick with legal documents. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the effort of containing my rage as I pretended to read through the papers. They were elaborate fakes designed to look official but bearing the signatures of their fraudulent lawyer and containing legal language that wouldn't hold up under real scrutiny. The attention to detail was impressive. They'd even forged court stamps and filing numbers. "This is impossible," I whispered, playing my role perfectly. "Dad left me this house. It's in his will." "Sweetheart," Mom said, placing a condescending hand on my shoulder, "your father was very sick when he made that will. The court has determined that you manipulated a dying man to steal your family's inheritance. But don't worry, we're not heartless. We'll give you until sunset to pack your personal belongings." Dave, one of the supposed property managers, began measuring rooms and taking photos. "We'll need to document any damage caused by the previous occupant," he announced loudly. "The owners want a full assessment for insurance purposes." Marcus was practically glowing with satisfaction. "You know, Jane, this could have been easier if you'd just been reasonable from the beginning. We offered to share the house to let you stay as our tenant, but you were too proud and stubborn. Just like Dad always said, you never learned when to be grateful. The psychological cruelty was breathtaking. They weren't content with stealing my inheritance. They needed to break me emotionally to make me believe I deserved this treatment." Mom began directing the fake property managers to specific items, claiming they were family heirlooms that needed to be returned to their rightful owners. Oh, and Jane, Mom added casually, "We've already contacted your employer to let them know you might be unreliable for the next few weeks. Mental health struggles and homelessness can be very destabilizing. We thought they should be prepared." That was the moment I realized the full scope of their plan. They weren't just stealing my house, they were attempting to destroy my career, my reputation, and my entire life. They wanted to reduce me to complete dependence on them, to force me to beg for their mercy and accept whatever scraps they might offer. I excused myself to pack, but actually went to my bedroom to call Mr. Martinez. "They're here," I whispered into the phone. "Everything's happening exactly like you predicted." "Perfect." His voice was calm and confident. "Have they presented the fake court documents?" "Yes, and they brought fake property managers to document everything. They're claiming ownership and trying to evict me immediately." "Excellent. That's criminal fraud, breaking and entering, and conspiracy. Keep recording everything. I'll be there in 20 minutes with sheriff's deputies and the real court orders. Jane, this is it. You're about to watch them destroy themselves completely." When I returned to the living room, Marcus was loading my nursing textbooks into a box. "You won't be needing these anymore," he said with a cruel laugh. "We've been thinking you might be happier in a nice assisted living facility somewhere with counselors who can help you adjust to a more manageable lifestyle." Mom nodded sympathetically. "We've already found a lovely place about an hour away. Very affordable with excellent mental health services. You'll thank us eventually." The casual discussion of institutionalizing me was the final straw. These people weren't just greedy, they were genuinely evil, planning to warehouse me in some facility while they enjoyed the fruits of their theft. I had to bite my tongue to keep from exploding with fury. "What about my job?" I asked, still playing the defeated victim. "Oh, honey," Mom's voice dripped with fake concern. "We already explained to your supervisor that you've been having episodes. Paranoid delusions about family members trying to steal from you, emotional instability, inappropriate outbursts. They were very understanding when we explained that you needed intensive psychiatric care." Dave approached with an official-looking clipboard. "We'll need you to sign this document, acknowledging that you're voluntarily surrendering the property due to mental incapacity. It will make the transition much smoother for everyone." I stared at the paper, recognizing it as the final piece of their fraud. By signing, I would be creating legal documentation that could be used to support their fabricated story. Even though the document was fake, my signature could be used to muddy the waters in any future legal proceedings. "I need a moment," I said, taking the clipboard toward the kitchen. "Don't take too long," Marcus called after me. "We have contractors coming this afternoon to start renovations, and we need you gone before they arrive." In the kitchen, I quickly texted Mr. Martinez. "They want me to sign a document claiming mental incapacity." "Should I?" His response was immediate. "Absolutely not. Stall for 5 more minutes. The cavalry is coming." The sound of multiple vehicles pulling into the driveway caused everyone to freeze. Through the kitchen window, I watched 3 police cruisers and Mr. Martinez's black sedan park behind the U-Haul truck. My heart soared as I recognized Sheriff's Deputy Williams, whom I'd met during a community health fair at the hospital. Jane, Mom's voice had lost its confident edge. "Who did you call?" I walked back into the living room, no longer bothering to hide my smile. "I called my lawyer, Mom." "The real one." Marcus rushed to the window, his face going pale as he watched uniformed officers approaching the house. "This is ridiculous. We have court orders. We have legal documentation." The front door opened, and Mr. Martinez entered, followed by 3 sheriff's deputies. Behind them came a woman in a business suit whom I didn't recognize. The fake property managers immediately began edging toward the back door, but Deputy Williams positioned himself to block their exit. "Good morning, Mr. Martinez," announced formally. "I'm Robert Martinez, Miss Mitchell's legal counsel. These gentlemen are here to arrest several individuals for conspiracy to commit fraud, breaking and entering, and attempted theft of property." Mom's mask finally slipped completely. This is harassment. We have every right to be here. This is our family's house. Deputy Williams stepped forward, consulting his notepad. Ma'am, are you Linda Mitchell? Yes, and I demand to know you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit inheritance fraud, criminal trespass, and identity theft. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists as she sputtered in disbelief. Marcus tried to run for the back door but was immediately tackled by another deputy. This is insane, he screamed as they cuffed him. She's mentally ill. She's been manipulating everyone. We have documentation. The woman in the business suit introduced herself as Detective Sarah Chen from the Financial Crimes Unit. We've been investigating this case for 3 weeks, she explained. The evidence of premeditated fraud is overwhelming. Mr. Martinez opened his briefcase and pulled out thick folders. Officers, you'll find complete documentation of this conspiracy, including recorded admissions of guilt, financial records proving systematic theft, and evidence of psychological abuse designed to facilitate property theft. Those recordings are illegal, Mom shrieked from the back of the police car. Actually, Mrs. Mitchell, Detective Chen replied calmly, Ohio is a one-party consent state. Your daughter had every right to record conversations in her own home, especially when documenting criminal activity. The fake property managers were identified as Dave Sullivan and Rick Morrison, Marcus's gambling buddies who had agreed to play their roles in exchange for debt forgiveness. Both had extensive criminal records and immediately began trying to negotiate plea deals, throwing Marcus and Mom under the bus with enthusiastic cooperation. As the arrests continued, Mr. Martinez explained the full scope of what we'd uncovered. In addition to the attempted inheritance fraud, we've documented systematic financial abuse totaling over $37,000 in fraudulent charges, repairs, and inflated bills. We've also uncovered evidence that Mrs. Mitchell has been collecting Social Security benefits using this address while claiming residency, which constitutes federal mail fraud. Mom's lawyer, the real one they'd been working with, arrived just as she was being loaded into the police car. Richard Blackwood was exactly what I'd expected, a sleazy personal injury attorney with slicked-back hair and a cheap suit. He immediately began demanding the arrest be stopped, claiming his clients were the victims of a setup. Mr. Blackwood, Detective Chen said pleasantly, you might want to review your own legal situation. We have evidence that you knowingly prepared fraudulent court documents and advised your clients on how to commit inheritance fraud. The State Bar Association will be very interested in your case. The lawyer's confident expression crumbled as he realized he'd been caught in the web too. Everything they'd done to frame me had been documented, recorded, and prepared for prosecution. Their own words, their own admissions, their own fraudulent documents would be used to convict them. As the police cars pulled away with my mother and brother in custody, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. 2 years of manipulation, abuse, and fear had ended in a single morning. The family who had tried to destroy me was now facing years in prison for their crimes. Mr. Martinez put a gentle hand on my shoulder. Jane, there's something else you need to know. Your father's trust includes provisions for emotional damages and legal costs. Between the criminal restitution and the civil lawsuit we'll file, you'll recover everything they stole and more. But more importantly, you'll never have to see them again unless you choose to. Detective Chen handed me a business card. Miss Mitchell, you'll need to come to the station this week to give a formal statement, but I want you to know this case will be used as a training example for other investigators. The documentation you and Mr. Martinez prepared is some of the most thorough evidence I've ever seen in a family fraud case. The house felt different immediately. Without their toxic presence, it was like a weight had been lifted from the very walls. I walked through the rooms, seeing them clearly for the first time in months. This was my home. This was my father's gift to me. And I had successfully defended it against people who should have loved and protected me. 3 months later, I was sitting in the same kitchen where I'd received that fake eviction notice, but everything had changed. The house felt like home again, peaceful, warm, and filled with possibility instead of dread. Mom had been sentenced to 3 years in prison for inheritance fraud and conspiracy. Marcus got 4 years due to his additional gambling debts and the discovery that he'd been using fraudulent contractor licenses. Their lawyer, Richard Blackwood, lost his license and received 2 years for conspiracy and document fraud. The financial recovery exceeded even Mr. Martinez's predictions. Between criminal restitution, civil lawsuit settlements, and insurance claims, I received over $120,000 in damages. But the money wasn't the real victory, it was the validation that what happened to me was wrong, criminal, and that justice could still prevail when good people stood up to family bullies. Dave and Rick, the fake property managers, testified against Mom and Marcus in exchange for reduced sentences. Their testimony revealed details I hadn't known about the conspiracy, including plans to have me committed to a psychiatric facility once they gained control of the house. The depth of their malice was staggering, but it also confirmed that my father's instincts about them had been absolutely correct. I used part of the settlement money to renovate the house according to my own vision. Dad's bedroom became my home office where I study for my pediatric nursing certification. The living room that Mom had redecorated became a cozy space filled with plants, books, and photos of Dad and me. Most importantly, I changed all the locks and installed a security system that only I control. The extended family members who had been manipulated by Mom and Marcus's lies slowly began reaching out to apologize. Some relationships were salvageable. Others were permanently damaged by their willingness to believe I was mentally unstable without investigating the truth. I learned that family isn't just about blood, it's about loyalty, respect, and genuine love, qualities my mother and brother had never possessed. Dr. Chen, my therapist, helped me process the trauma and recognize the warning signs I'd missed. Jane, she told me during one of our sessions, you survived a sophisticated psychological warfare campaign designed by people who knew your vulnerabilities intimately. The fact that you recognized what was happening and fought back shows incredible strength and intelligence. The nursing supervisors at Cleveland General, far from being concerned about my mental health, were impressed by how I'd handled the crisis while maintaining my work performance. Several colleagues shared their own stories of family betrayal and financial abuse, making me realize how common these situations actually are. Many people suffer in silence because they're ashamed to admit their families are hurting them. Mr. Martinez became more than just my lawyer. He became a mentor and father figure. Your dad would be so proud, he told me at our final meeting. He always said you were stronger than anyone gave you credit for. This experience proved him right. He also helped me establish a college scholarship fund in Dad's name for nursing students who've overcome family adversity. The most unexpected development was reconnecting with Dad's sister, Aunt Carol, who lived in California. She'd been estranged from our family for years due to Mom's manipulative behavior. When she learned about the trial through news coverage, she reached out to apologize for staying away and to share stories about Dad's childhood that helped me understand his protective instincts about his legacy. Your father always worried about Linda and Marcus, Aunt Carol explained during one of our long phone conversations. Even as teenagers, they showed signs of entitlement and greed. He loved them, but he didn't trust them with important things. That's why he was so careful about his will and why he chose you. My relationship with the house itself transformed completely. Instead of feeling like a burden I couldn't handle, it became a source of strength and pride. I learned to do basic maintenance, created a beautiful garden in the backyard, and hosted holiday dinners for friends who'd become my chosen family. The house that had nearly been stolen from me became the foundation for building the life Dad had envisioned for me. The legal victory also opened unexpected doors professionally. Detective Chen invited me to speak at training sessions about recognizing elder and family financial abuse. My story became part of a curriculum for social workers and healthcare providers who work with vulnerable adults. Helping others recognize and escape similar situations gave my ordeal broader purpose and meaning. Perhaps most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts about people and situations. The red flags I'd ignored or rationalized away during Mom and Marcus's campaign were actually accurate warnings that I'd been trained to dismiss. Setting boundaries, saying no to unreasonable requests, and prioritizing my own well being weren't selfish acts, they were necessary survival skills. Today, I'm thriving in my career as a pediatric nurse, specializing in cases where children need advocates against family members who might harm them. My experience taught me how to recognize manipulation tactics and how to help vulnerable people document and escape abusive situations. In a way, Mom and Marcus's betrayal prepared me to protect others facing similar threats. The house mortgage is nearly paid off, my career is flourishing, and I've built relationships with people who value honesty, loyalty, and genuine care. Sometimes the greatest gift life gives us is showing us exactly who people really are, even when that truth is painful. Dad's legacy wasn't just the house, it was the strength, wisdom, and moral compass he gave me to protect what matters most. Have you ever had family members who tried to take advantage of your grief or vulnerability? How did you handle betrayal from people who were supposed to love and protect you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories matter. If this tale of family karma hitting back inspired you, smash that like button and hit subscribe for more real-life justice stories. Share this with anyone who needs to know that standing up to family bullies is possible and that justice really can prevail. Thank you for letting me share my story, and remember, sometimes the family who tries to destroy you just reveals how strong you really are. Here's to building the life our loved ones dreamed for us, protected from those who never deserved our trust in the first place.